Good evening, everybody. I'm Scott with Warrior 321. All our people who are following us on Facebook, if you get a chance, please go back and watch Tuesday nights. It's on our Facebook page as well. I just want to welcome you all here tonight, especially we've got a few newcomers. That's always great to see. Tuesday was, I spoke really more about the problem side of it and what is going on, and as I understand tonight is going to be more about more specific examples of what we can do about it. So I just want to thank everybody for being here, and I'll hand it over to you, Alan.
Thank you, Scott. First of all, good evening, everybody. Hey, don't do it too loud, it scares me. In fact, when I usually walk in, people are applauding, so I don't know what's going on tonight. I feel better now. So we are so
beg for it.
I have to beg for it, I understand. We're really glad for everybody that's here, those that were here Tuesday night, and then some folks that are here tonight that was not here Tuesday night. We're so glad that you're here, and I think there's a couple more that are on their way here as well. So I just want to welcome everybody to be here. My name is Alan Wilkett. I am the president of Warrior 321. We started this 3 or 4 years ago now here in Hernando after I retired from law enforcement. So I'm retired law enforcement, 30 years plus of law enforcement experience. And I know that's a shock to you. You say, that guy looks 29. How in the world did he serve 30 years in law enforcement? So I had 30 years of law enforcement. I ran our human trafficking task force for many years. So human trafficking is an area of law enforcement that I worked in for probably 15, 16 years, and now still doing it today. You're going to be introduced in a few minutes to my friend who is sitting over here, and we'll share a little bit about her when it's time for her to come up and share with you a little bit. But what I want to do tonight, so Tuesday night we talked about human trafficking really from a basic level. What is it? What does it look like? What forms? How big is it? We did that. I'm going to do a brief recap of that, and I'm going to do that very quickly, but really for those that may not have been here Tuesday night, to just kind of catch you up to where we are tonight, so that when we talk about it tonight, we'll all kind of start from that starting point. So human trafficking, for those that don't know, human trafficking, and I'm going to give you a street level definition of what human trafficking is. When one person takes advantage of the vulnerabilities of another person for a commercial gain. So that's really what human trafficking is. When one person takes advantage of the vulnerabilities of another person for a commercial gain. And it manifests itself really in two different ways: labor trafficking and commercial sex trafficking. So those are the two that you really hear the most of. There's other forms like involuntary servitude, domestic servitude, forced marriage. There's some other forms of it as well, but typically here in Florida particularly, we frame it up in two forms: labor trafficking, commercial sex trafficking. Now, what does that really mean when you talk about labor trafficking, commercial sex trafficking? Again, when one person takes advantage of the vulnerabilities. So when the TVPA was passed in 2000, and this may come as a shock to some of you, that prior to 2000, we had no criminal statute against human trafficking. None. And as big and as bad as human trafficking is in our communities right now, and we'll talk a little bit more about how big it is, to me that's almost a shame that we had no charging ability to charge somebody for human trafficking prior to the year 2000. And in year 2000, Congress passed a law called the TVPA, the Trafficking Victims Protection Act. And what it basically done on a federal level is it gave us the ability to investigate human trafficking as a criminal offense. Now, prior to that, we investigated human trafficking, but we couldn't call it human trafficking or charge it as human trafficking. The youngest victim that I personally have ever had the opportunity to recover was recovered, and we didn't have the ability to charge the buyer or the trafficker with trafficking, and instead we charged with child abuse or child sexual abuse in that case. So we had to use different criminal statutes to kind of get there, but now we have a human trafficking statute as of 2000. Florida passed their first human trafficking law in about 2003. So you can still see, and that's 22 years ago, but as far as criminal activity, being able to charge somebody, that's relatively a young crime. 22 years is as long as we've been charging somebody with human trafficking. But when we talk about human trafficking, and so I mentioned to you that I'm 30 plus years law enforcement, 14, 15, 16 years directly fighting the human trafficking problem that we have in our communities. And I will tell you that in my career, and I worked major crimes, I worked court securities, I worked patrol, I usually tell people I worked just about everything you can do in law enforcement, not because I was skilled, but because they finally was like, hey, you need to try something different. I worked just about, except a dog. I never had a dog. I never was a canine officer. And I have to qualify now, I have a dog. He just happens to be worthless. He's not a good dog. He's a worthless animal. So I've never done canine, but I've done just about everything. Worked undercover, worked dope for many years, all those kind of things. And in that, the most diabolical crime that I ever investigated was human trafficking. Because think about it. One person thinks that they can own another individual. And when I say own, whether that means for years or whether that means they rent you for an hour in a hotel room or in a brothel on the backside of a street somewhere off of a street track, for somebody to think they could buy another human being, whether it be for labor or for sex, is just not right. It's diabolical. And so and then when you look at the abuse, and you'll hear more about that, the trauma that's inflicted on the victim from both the trafficker and the buyer. So we look at that. How big of a problem is it? The International Labor Organization says that right now, while we're sitting in this room, that right now there's about 50 million victims. 50 million. To be exact, 49.6. So nearly 50 million. It generates, every single year, it generates $236 billion a year. Which means it's bigger than Exxon, it's bigger than Apple, it's bigger than Google, it's bigger than any conglomerate you can think of. Human trafficking is a bigger enterprise as far as money being made. The NASDAQ, our financial market, estimates that human trafficking is $330 billion. Our financial market says human trafficking. It's the second largest criminal enterprise in the world. Drug trafficking is number one, human trafficking is number two. Drug trafficking is still by far the largest criminal enterprise, but most experts believe that within 10 years, human trafficking will be number one. Why will human trafficking be number one? Why will it exceed drug trafficking? Because in drug trafficking, you use the product one time and that product is gone. So if I snort coke, if I take the pills, if I consume meth, whatever it may be, once I use that product is gone forever. With a human being, they are used over and 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 over again, and that's first night. Many of the victims that I have recovered will tell you that they have been raped, and we may as well say what it is. They have been raped 12 to 25 times a night. Can you imagine the trauma that little girl or that little boy has experienced? Because most times we don't think boys are victims as well. In fact, we're getting more and more, and I think it's because we're getting better. I don't think it's because necessarily boys being victims is a new thing, but we're getting better at, I think, encountering boys and really working through those stigmas that boys have about being raped. A boy has a hard time admitting that. It's bad for anyone, but for a boy, the stigma of being raped by another male brings a whole other dynamic. And so you have a really hard time for getting disclosures from males. And so, but even then, for years, it was about 93% girls and women in sex trafficking, and it's about 7% boys and men. Now we're starting to see about 30% boys and men, and about 70% girls and females. So you can see kind of that, and I don't think it's more victims necessarily. I think it's just getting better to get the disclosures. My point being, boys and girls are both being ravaged by this crime. $300 billion a year. ILO, $236 billion a year. Second largest criminal enterprise in the world. And if I asked you the question today and said, what country do you think consumes more human trafficking victims than any other country in the world? The answer is the United States. Here we are, the land of the free, the home of the brave. We value freedom. and liberty above all things, right? And yet we consume more victims, both labor and sex trafficking. We consume more victims than any other country in the world. To me, as someone who has given my adult life to serving their communities, our communities, that makes my blood boil, that we would allow that to happen in our country. So one of the goals of things like tonight is to become aware, to get empowered, to get educated about something that is this diabolical, and then to empower not just ourselves, but to empower our families, to empower our children, to empower our communities, and ultimately empower our country to really take a stand against human trafficking. So that's kind of a brief overview. Let me give you a little bit of the forms. I mentioned them to you, but when I talk about forms, labor trafficking is going to look like agriculture, right? Working the lettuce fields, the strawberry fields, the orange groves that we used to have a lot of here in Florida. They're disappearing by the day. But using the orange groves, construction, big. I saw a group of roofers the other day, and I thought, man, I wonder, just wonder if there's not a trafficking crew up there on that roof. So roofing, construction, landscaping, big. Would you agree? So landscaping would have a big component to trafficking. What about things like, because we don't think about this in labor trafficking, what about Asian nail salons? Just about everyone I've ever been in an investigative role, and I will tell you that I investigated a whole lot of them here in the Tampa Bay area, and every single one that I went into had a labor trafficking issue. Everyone. So you have the foreign, looks like a foreign national nail tech, I guess is what the technical term for them are, but they're taking care of the customer, usually have a dominant male somewhere in the building, oftentimes kind of watching the operation. It's a very scripted conversation if you talk to the girls who are doing the nails. It's a scripted, if you try to engage too much, they oftentimes will get replaced. You can tell the answers are rehearsed. Oftentimes they will feign that they're not able to speak much English, and it could be true and it may not. What I will tell you is that every one of them has come from one city in New York, one city, because I've looked at every single one of their IDs. They come from one, but they've come from Beijing, China, into that one city in New York, and then they're dispersed throughout the eastern United States. If it's on the western side, they're coming through LA, but they'll all have the same city on their either driver's license or ID card. So the point that I'm making is we don't think about that very often, right? That things that we interact with on just a day-to-day business level, we oftentimes don't think about there could be something going on besides just true transaction of business. Because what's happening to those girls who are typically Chinese, there's some Korean, but most of the time they're going to be Chinese. What's happening is they're under a debt bondage. So in order to get here, it's usually $20,000 to $22,000 to get their visa and transportation here. How many women, young women in China, do you think has $22,000? Very few, right? So what happens is they enter into a debt bondage. And that debt bondage says, I'll go ahead, I'll pay for you to go, I'll pay for your visa, I'll pay for your transportation, but when you get there, you got to work until you pay me off with interest. Do you think they ever pay them off? Absolutely not. So that debt bondage carries on from year to year to year. They're moved often. Oftentimes when I would go in on investigations and start interacting with the girls and try to talk to them, usually bringing a translator with me, and we would spoke Mandarin Chinese. When we would go in and engage them, by the next day they're gone. They have come in during the night, got every one of those girls and took them someplace else. That's how fast, because they're watching them on video. So you have things like that we oftentimes don't think about, but it's happening right here in our communities, right? We got a lot of things like that in our community, and we just don't think about it. The problem with it on the investigative side is they rarely disclose they're a victim. So for law enforcement, it's really difficult because I need a victim in order to really pursue a criminal charge. And they will tell you straight up, hey, it's better here than my home is. Or their families are under some sort of surveillance and threat. So the coercion that's there. So you will not get them, rarely, I won't say never because we've had a few, but rarely do you get them to disclose as a victim. So it's a very difficult, I think one of the things we have to do from a community standpoint is begin to get this kind of awareness out there so that we're able to not just engage it from a law enforcement, because if we expect law enforcement to solve human trafficking, we're already done. Because there's just not enough resources in law enforcement to do it. It's too big. It's going to take the community coming together, which is why we're having things like this. On the commercial sex side, things like brothels. Most people think there is no such thing as brothels anymore. That's an old West concept. I promise you there are brothels, and there are brothels in our area. Usually in subdivisions. They'll set up we took one down in Pinellas County that was 2 blocks from the police station. You can almost see the top of the police station from the brothel. And this has been a few years ago. My point being is, yes, we still have those. You're going to have strip clubs or sex shops, just disguised as a legitimate business, if you can call that legitimate. We refer to them as SOBs, sexually oriented businesses. I just like saying SOB. So we always refer to them as our SOBs. In fact, their business license, which I thought was so good, was SOB, sexually oriented business. So strip clubs, sex shops. What about what we used to refer to as Asian massage parlors, or AMPs? Now they're IMBs, illicit massage businesses are how they're referred to. What about those massage businesses? You think they're sex shops? Absolutely they are. In fact, any business that you can go to a site called RubMaps, and RubMaps is huge. Okay, how many's ever heard of RubMaps?
No, that's why we're here.
Okay. I had one person raise their hand. I'm a little worried about that guy. RubMaps is like a Yelp for IMBs. It's they review illicit massage businesses. Used to be free. Used to be able to get an account for free to get on there. Now it's a paywall to get on there. But you can look it up on the internet. You can look it up if you choose. I wouldn't recommend you do that. The FBI may show up a little bit later. Just don't worry about that. No, I'm just kidding. It's not illegal to go on there. But RubMaps is they will review. So, for instance, there are some IMBs in this county, in Hernando County. They are listed on RubMaps, and if you pull them up and look at them on RubMaps, they will rate the girls that are in there. So these Johns, these buyers, go in there, go on RubMaps, and give them a Yelp review, how many stars they get. They will describe what kind of services they will give you, and they usually do it, and you'll see some of it tonight, some of the abbreviations that are used, but they'll put something like, and I'm just going to use a name, Lily is really good at BJ's. She gave me a BBJ, which is a bear blowjob. She gave me this, and so they'll use that. They'll talk about other positions she's good at, and it all ended with a happy ending. So those are what you'll see on there. They'll checkbox services that she offers, and they will rate them. And that's right here in our community. And we don't oftentimes think about that. We go by them driving, right, and we'll see it usually in one of our strip stores. That's usually where they set up shop, and we see this massage parlor, Lily's or Rose's Touch or whatever that may be. We'll see that there, and we think, well, that's just I don't know if I would go in there, but this is a massage business, and it really is just a brothel that's disguised as a legitimate business. So my point tonight is this: understanding that human trafficking is happening around us, that it's happening whether it's, and thankfully Hernando doesn't have any strip clubs, right? So there are no strip clubs in Hernando. The closest one was right through this light right here, and down about 200 or 300 yards. And no, it was called Icon. So it was just on the other side of the 7-Eleven. That's where most of the Hernando people came there, because that was in my county. And I told her, I think on Tuesday night, I know we're on Facebook, so I'm probably going to get in trouble for this. I'll probably get sued after tonight. I usually do. But it burnt down. And I told people, I said, just because I smell like smoke, don't think I had anything to do with it. So, because I could not stand the strip clubs in our county. Yes.
So you're saying so we just bought Rookies Sports Bar, and we're looking at buying the whole plaza, and there's an Asian massage there. I'm afraid to go in there to see what's in there.
I have a resource for you.
Yes.
One of the cool ways we're attacking that, and I don't know if I should give away taxes. I'll put it this way. There are mechanisms in place now if you buy that plaza and you suspect that something like that, first of all, we build a roadmap to find out immediately if it is. If it falls into that category that I lovingly call an SOV, if it falls into that category, there are now banks and insurance companies that will refuse to give them the necessary funding and insurance that they need to operate a business. And it's one way to really take them down.
Well, the way I look at it is that actually we should be able to leverage the owner to reduce the price. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yep, absolutely. So that's fantastic. So is it a nail salon or is it a
It is
massage?
Isn't there a massage place in that plaza?
I think it's just nails.
It's just nails? Are you sure?
I live right there, but I haven't been there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's worth looking at.
I'll drive by on my way home.
So again, just to understand that these things are happening in our communities, and oftentimes we don't think of them, right? It's just not something that's on our radar when you start looking at it. So that's kind of what some of the forms are. Commercial sex, we talked about strip clubs, we talked about IMBs, we talk about brothels, we talk about street tracks. Street tracks is kind of that normal, we see it in the movies, where the girls are scantily clad and they're walking up and down the street, so that's a street track, or what they refer to in the life as a blade. So they're walking the blade, and pins and pushes, they'll talk about that sometimes in their language as well. But this is kind of that sidewalk transaction. It still happens. Believe me, Tampa has a street track. That's well known. So Pinellas has a street track. So there are street tracks. Believe it or not, Pasco had a street track that most people weren't aware of. But those that wanted services knew about it. So there are street tracks still out there, but what we're seeing is it's moving all online. In fact, statistically, 60% of all trafficking is now happening online. 60%. Now that stat is probably 3 years old now, which leads me to believe it's probably much higher than that, because it's all moving that way. We may be at 70 or 75% of all trafficking is happening online now. And I'm going to show you some of that tonight, some of the mechanisms that are in there. But before I do that, there are two things I want to do. First of all, I want to introduce Tony, who just came in. As usual, she's late and makes a grand entry. I'm just kidding. She is not.
She
is
looks
never
very
late.
tired. She's not been a long day.
She is never late. Somebody told her pizza was coming. She's out there right now. You know, Tony is my dear friend. Tony is the one who helped me start this. He started at Panera Bread on a napkin. And when we met there 3 or 4 years ago now, first time I'd ever met her, and immediately we knew that there was a work that we wanted to do, and there was a group that got together that day, and we talked about what we could do to bring awareness to our community. And I had just freshly retired. Again, I know I look too young to be retired, but I had just freshly retired and was still looking to stay engaged in this fight. And so Warrior 321 came to me. She serves as the vice president of Warrior 321, and she's just an amazing person. So I'm glad she was able to be there before tonight is over. She's still here. I'm going to have her to come and talk as well. But I also want to introduce my friend. This is Kim that is sitting here. Kim and I have been friends for many years. We've been in this fight together for many years. She is a lived experience expert, which means she's a survivor. She'll tell you more about that. She's going to share a little bit of her story tonight. I want her to share with you, because I think probably the thing that I fear the most in trainings like this is that we talk stats, and we talk locations, and we talk terms, and we talk about terminologies and language and all that. We talk about the technical side of human trafficking. But underneath all that technical talk is a human heart. It's human feelings. It's someone who still dreams about being a nurse or dreams about being a mother. I'll say this because I think this will just really segue into Kim coming up. I was in Washington, D.C., and again, I'm on live, I probably shouldn't say this, but I don't like D.C. at all. I don't like going there. I have no desire to go to Washington, D.C., and I end up being there a lot more than I would like to be. But I was there, had been invited, in fact, across the country, the entire country, Department of Justice, DOJ Maine, which is the one in DC, had invited 100 of what they considered to be the top experts in the United States to come to DC to come together to talk about a human trafficking symposium. And to give you an idea, Ken Paxton, who is the AG for Texas, and others, they were all in there. Somehow or another, I got invited. And I think it was a mistake, but they invited me. And so they invited me, and I went. And so I'm sitting with this group of 100, and the Attorney General's up there, and some of the top executives for DOJ, and there's some others and dignitaries, and they do their opening ceremonies. And if you've ever been to DOJ Maine, they have what's known as the Hall of Justice, and it's this big marble room that you don't need a microphone to talk in, and it has the marble and the sound just really, and it's just a gorgeous, ornate room. And we're in that room called the Hall of Justice at this. They had a panel, and the panel had a survivor. And the survivor was talking for a minute. She was talking about, she said, I wish people would know that it's not just the mental trauma, because that's there. When you've been raped 500 or 600 times in your life, the trauma that's there. She said, but I wish people would understand that it's not just the trauma of the mental and the emotional, because those, but the physical. She said, the only thing I ever wanted to do in life was to have children. And she said, because of my physical injuries from being raped that many times, forced to have sex for many years, multiple times a night, multiple years. She said, I've got ovarian cancer that the doctor says is part of that. I've had to have part of my reproductive system has had to be removed. And she said, and she began to cry on stage. And she said, I can't have children. That's all I really want to ever do. I just want to be a mom. And I'm hearing the story. My heart is just ripping because you can see the anguish. And all of a sudden, this lady sitting right in front of me begins to wail. I'm not just a little whimper. I begin to just burst out in wail, in tears and crying. And I'm thinking, my goodness, what's going on there? And she finally gains her composure a little bit. And somebody asked her from the stage, said, ma'am, are you okay? And she stood up and she said, I'm so sorry. She said, but I too am a survivor. And all I wanted to do was have kids. And I just went in last week and I've got ovarian cancer. And they just told me I could never have kids. She said, I wish somebody would talk about really the price that is being paid. Because oftentimes we look at people who buy another human being, and it's the good old boy network, and we slap them on the wrist and talk about boys will be boys, and these guys. We just talked about it today. We just had a legislative working group all day today in Lakeland. We just drove here for the event tonight. And in Florida, just so you know, and we're going to talk about this, but in Florida, if you're a buyer in Florida, you buy another human being, you get a misdemeanor. A misdemeanor. But if you're the victim, the one who got raped, you get a felony. And it's called prostitution and solicitation. And so because they charge them with prostitution, the victim gets a felony and the buyer gets a misdemeanor. Now if you buy a kid, it's a different thing, it's a felony. But if you're buying another adult, my point to you is this: we are upside down in this. We're not considering the trauma and the hurt and the pain. And when you hear the story of my friend Kim, and she shares a little bit about what's going on, I think you'll feel that. And I always want us to remember, numbers are one thing, but the human experience is a totally different thing. We have to always remember behind every single number is a dream. It's a dream, it's a life. It's a real hurt. It's a real lost years. It really is pain. And so I want you to always remember that. And Kim's going to come and share with you. And again, she's just a dear friend. In fact, we're presenting next week at the National Just Conference over in Orlando. And I got a session for law enforcement. So she's going to come and share with you. She is a courageous, incredible woman that I think you will immediately fall in love with. She's just amazing. So thank you, Kim. You're going to get a lot of information. And then right after that, Kim and I are going to come. We're just going to sit on the stage for a few minutes. And I'm going to share a few more slides with you and her and I. We're going to talk about what can you do. Now, Kim didn't tell you this, but I will tell you because it'll set the stage for the two of us kind of offering some things to do to protect you and your family. Kim now serves, so you heard the life that she came from, right? From the time she was very young, the vulnerabilities, the abuse, the trafficking, all of those things that happen. Now Kim serves as a law enforcement specialist. She works with federal law enforcement, state law enforcement, and local law enforcement, county law enforcement, as a victims advocate, as a mentor in these operations when law enforcement puts a human trafficking operation. Those of you that read the paper, which I know is most people don't do, or if
What's a
you
paper?
have the newspaper or news story, this latest operation down in Tampa where the U.S. Marshal's office recovered, I think it was 60 kids.
Yeah,
60 kids. She is the victim's advocate on that operation. So she's went from there to now this law enforcement specialist, and is doing great work and now bringing other people out of the life and giving them the resources. So this talks about how resilient and courageous she really is. So she'll bring, so her working with victims on a day-to-day basis will give you a different perspective on what to do to protect yourself. And so we'll kind of tag team back and forth on that as well. If you don't remember anything else about human trafficking tonight, please remember the triangle. The human trafficking triangle is a visual of what human trafficking is. What that basically tells you is it takes 3 actors to make human trafficking happen. You need a victim, which Kim talked about, you need a trafficker, and as I said Tuesday night, the trafficker is becoming less human. And I want that to impact you. The trafficker is becoming less human, the more it's becoming more and more digital. And we'll talk even more about that. When we talk about digital, platforms are kind of taking the place of the physical trafficker now, and you're seeing the sale and the facilitation of the sale happening online. And I'll share with you a couple of sites where that's happening. So you have the trafficker, and then you have the buyer. I've already mentioned to you the buyer gets a misdemeanor if he gets swept up, while the victim will oftentimes catch a felony. And so I oftentimes ask, and I'm not going to spend a long time on this tonight, but which of the 3 sides of the triangle could we attack the most that would have the biggest impact on collapsing human trafficking, ending human trafficking? And the answer is the buyer, right? We have to get after the demand. I mentioned it to you on Tuesday. If I put an operation together tonight, a law enforcement operation, and we were able to go arrest every single trafficker in the United States tonight and put every one of them in jail, would that stop trafficking? It might for a moment, right? Maybe for a few minutes, maybe for an hour or 2, but you're going to immediately have another trafficker standing in and taking their place. If we were to recover every victim, would that stop human trafficking? Maybe for a couple of minutes, a few minutes, but then the trafficker is going to go find another vulnerable human being and suck them right back into life, either by force or by luring, and most of it happens by luring. The gorilla pimp that Kim talks about, the force side of that, the brutal pimp, but you also have the Romeo, which has the luring. In fact, there's about 7 different types of traffickers that are out there. So we can stop, but if we can reduce the demand and take the demand out of the market, in other words, telling the buyer, quit spending money buying another human being. If you drop the demand out of there, there's no reason to have a victim and a trafficker, because you don't need a supply if you don't have a demand. The problem with the state of Florida, I'm going to be very blunt about this, is that Florida, and I'm going to say it, and again, I'm taking a chance, risk, but I'm going to say it because it needs to be said, Florida is not serious about ending demand. Because if we were, we have proposed for the last 3 years, going to do it again this year at the legislative session, that trafficking for buying another human being gets moved from a misdemeanor to a 3rd-degree felony. And for 3 years, they have refused to do it. And so until we get serious about the buyer, and we hear that, and I'm not going to go into it all, but we hear all the excuses, the young and dumb, and all that kind of stuff. We don't want to hurt the buyer and take away some of their chances at going. And my response to that is, you heard the story tonight. Did that buyer give her a chance? Did she have a chance to live a health? No, she was forced to do these things. That buyer has a choice. The victim don't have a choice. And so to me, it's just the most audacious argument that I've ever heard, and we're gonna overcome that. This is the 4 stages of human trafficking. Not going to spend a long time here. Recruiting, grooming, trafficking, immersion. You heard Kim talk about she was in the life long enough that she became immersed. So these are not linear necessarily. They're usually circular, which means recruiting is when their vulnerabilities are assessed. Grooming is when they're kind of slowly conditioned for the life they're about to go into. Trafficking is where the money is being made. Immersion is when they become the bottom. They're kind of in the enterprise for a while. they become the recruiters, become the groomers, so they're committing criminal acts, right? Very difficult for law enforcement, very difficult for prosecutors, very difficult for judges, because I catch them, they're shoplifting, they're muling dope, they're committing identity theft, whatever that may be, fleeing and eluding. All of those things may be happening, and when law enforcement catches up with them and arrests them, those were really criminal offenses. But they're also a victim. So how do we treat them? Treat them as a victim, or do we treat them as a criminal? That's been a really difficult thing for law enforcement to do. I want to give you some stats, and then we're going to talk about what are some practical things that we can do. This comes from NCMEC, and so you know what NCMEC is. NCMEC is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Those of you that remember John Walsh, this is the John Walsh organization. John Walsh's son was kidnapped down in South Florida. He started NCMEC, and now it's one of the best organizations. They get about 75% of their funding from the federal government. They do amazing work. And they do all this tracking of kids. What they have found when they've looked at all of the cases that have happened in the 50 states, DC, and Puerto Rico, of the more than 25,000 cases of children reported missing to NCMEC in 2022, their data showed them that 1 in 6 were likely victims of human trafficking, sex trafficking in particular. So you can do the math on that number and see how many, according to their own data, was considered to be victims of sex trafficking. So is it happening? Absolutely. The 60 that the marshals recovered, I know when I was working our task forces with the FBI, with HSI, we would recover dozens a year in the Tampa Bay area. And we knew when we recovered those dozens every year that that's just the tip of the iceberg. That for every one we're recovering, there's probably at least 100 out there that we're not even getting close to. So you can tell the numbers are really big. They run the cyber tip line. I'm going to make a statement here in a minute, so I don't want you to get knocked off your chair when I make this statement to you. But in 2023, the cyber tip line that's run by NCMEC received 36 million reports of what's known as CSAM. What is CSAM? Child sexual abuse material. So they received 36 million reports. That's 36 million videos, pictures of our kids in the United States being put online. 36 million.
How many was not reported?
That's the whole point. So the 36 million, and again, I want you to know it says reports, not images and videos, because most of those reports had multiple images and multiple videos in it. So that's the bottom number there. That's the reports. Where do these come from? These come from your internet service providers that are out there. We're talking about your Facebook, your Snaps, your Twitters, your X. When they come across CSAM on their platforms, they report it to the cyber tip line. By the way, just to kind of put it in perspective, do you have any idea what online platform reports the most to the cyber tip line? Facebook. Of that 36 million, about 20 million was Facebook. And it's easy to look at Facebook and go, you dirty dogs. 20 million, at least they're reporting. Because if I showed you what Snapchat, which is a preferred communication tool for kids, Snapchat reported about 500,000, which has to be way underreported, right? So you're looking at 36 million, and as you said, it's way under what's actually out there. So 36 million, and I'll show you what they kind of that 36 million, there were 54 million image files, pictures. There was 49.5 million video files. And there was about 1.2 million other files, which could be writings or caricatures or depictions in other forms other than a picture or a video. So you can see, again, 105 million. So 36 million reports, 105 million individual files. That's our kids with their pictures out on the internet. These are minors. These are not adults. This is all minors that's being reported here. So this is categorization. Again, I'm not going to go through that all, but you can see some of the categories that was reported. Child pornography is by far the largest section of that. So when you hear on the news or literature, CSAM, just know that that's what we used to refer to as child pornography. So it's just the new word for child pornography. Online enticement has increased more than 300%. This is that groomed or coerced. This is why Florida last year passed the grooming law under lewd and lascivious, is because they're trying to look at a way to interrupt the child's sex trafficking before it actually happens and catch it while it's in the grooming phase. So there's an attempt to do that, very difficult, and it's going to get a constitutional challenge because you're trying to get somebody's thought or what's in their head as opposed, but if you can put certain behaviors there, that's what they're trying to do. Here's the one that scares me more than anything, is AI.
Yeah.
AI has changed the game. If you look at Discovery, I'm trying to think of some of the ones that are out there. The image generators that are out there from AI, I think one of them is called Journey, and there's some other ones out there. Google has one. When you look at those image generators from AI, you used to be able to really tell that that's an AI generated image. You know, they had 6 fingers. You know, the nose was over here on the side of their head. You would tell it to write, and so you could tell. That's changing rapidly because now the images that are being generated, you can't hardly tell them apart. I didn't put it into but to tell you how local this is, you might have remembered last year that the Pasco Sheriff's Office arrested the high school teacher at a Christian school down in Pasco County who was taking pictures of the kids in school and then using AI to generate them as nude.
Third graders. Yep.
Did he just get prosecuted?
Over 80
Yep.
days.
And he was almost 70. He was like 67 years old.
Yep.
And
I have never seen anything like that in all the years I've done it. Who gets that kind of stuff?
anybody, everybody's getting it. I've got some of that stuff on my phone. Some of that
I've
AI
never
stuff.
gotten
It's that
anything.
common. If you have ChatGPT, you've got AI.
Yep.
If you've got Gemini, you've got. If you've got what's some of the other ones? Some of the other ones that are out there. Yeah, you've got AI.
Yeah.
So
Copilot.
AI, and now the image generators and stuff like that have come a long, long way. Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, even Facebook puts out ads
Yep.
for the big AI stuff.
Facebook,
But
Meta,
I mean,
absolutely.
But I mean the pictures of children or anything. That's what I mean. I'm not talking about that.
Oh, but it's good. It's good that you don't know. But I'm telling you, they are downloadable tonight, and those programs can come in. And I mentioned a couple of them to you already. That all you have to do is say the words or upload the image of the child in particular, and then tell AI to take all of its clothes out and give it a nude body. You can even tell it what size you want it to be. You can tell it to change hair. You can put clothes on. You can make them clean shaven or not clean shaven. You can put all of that in the description, and it'll generate the image. And some of the craziest stuff you've ever seen. Well, of course, yeah, the video generator. So this scares me a whole lot, and so I just want to mention that to you. That
But can anybody put any of that stuff on your Facebook without your permission?
if they're in sync, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. I mean, they could
I mean,
upload.
I've never
Yeah.
run
Yeah.
across that.
So,
Gladly.
so here is what NCMEC is saying is the fastest growing segment of human trafficking. Anybody want to guess what it is? Familial trafficking. Families trafficking their own. We had a grandmother in Tampa, a friend of ours that we were with today, talks about this. It was her case that she worked in some years ago now, but a grandmother was trafficking her 4-year-old granddaughter in Tampa. You have uncles that are trafficking their niece for birthday dates. You've got families who are trafficking their own kids. And so familial trafficking, I want you to know this in stats. Again, this comes from NCMEC. Look at what we call the close proximity trafficking. Close proximity means somebody who knows your child and are trafficking them. Unknown to the child is very small. The babysitter, which is the pink up at the top, a child sex trafficker, small. Look at the big one, neighbor, family, or friend. Huge part of the total. Online enticement, parent or guardian. Look at these two right here. If you put the babysitter, mentor, coach, neighbor, or family friend, and parent, guardian, how much of that graph did those three, what we call the close proximity trafficker, look how much that takes up? Over half. It's the fastest growing reported side to NCMEC is what's known as familial trafficking. CSAM, a great study in 2018, child sexual abuse material, girls appear in an overwhelming majority. That's probably not a shock, right? Girls appear in a majority. Prepubescent children are at the greatest risk. When I say prepubescent, what's the age of a prepubescent child? There's not really an age, but it's the age of a child before they develop secondary sexual organs. Their breast starts to develop, pubic hair, genitals begin to develop on a boy. That's what a prepubescent is. Typically going to be somewhere in that 11, generally 10, somewhere in that right. But we know kids mature at different ages, so they generally talk about before they develop secondary sexual organs. They're the greatest risk. Boys are victimized. It's usually much more explicit or egregious or violent when boys typically are younger than girls when they're depicted in CSAM. Here's the 3 digital gateways. This is when we're going to really jump into this. I know we're running really, but I'm going to have Kim come up. And what we're basically going to do is we're just going to kind of tag team and talk about this a little bit. She'll talk about it from her perspective. I'll talk about it from the law enforcement side. And when we talk about 3 digital gateways. The 3 gateways that are typically being used are social media, apps, and gaming systems. By the way, gaming systems growing at the fastest rate. So gaming systems is exploding as an online enticement tool for kids. So social media, this is the 3 platforms. All social media falls into one of these categories. There is no social media out there that's outside one of these categories. So there's synchronous, asynchronous, and no synchronous. Synchronous means we're in sync in order to be able to share information. So Facebook, our Meta will be the big player there. If I send you a friend request, you accept the friend request, we start sharing information back and forth. That's a synchronous platform. Asynchronous, by the way, Facebook, and I got LinkedIn in there too. Always put that every time. I'm not on Facebook. I hate Facebook, by the way. I'm just saying. And I was talking to a bunch of kids not too long ago, and I was talking about Facebook, the dangers of Facebook. And they're looking at me like they're looking at me right now, like, okay, there's that old cop telling us about the dangers of Facebook again. And finally, this one little girl raises her hand, and I thought, man, I'm getting a question. That's great. I like when they give me questions. I said, yes, ma'am. She goes, Mr. Officer, sir, Facebook is for old people. And I thought to myself, okay, let me engage. I finally got somebody asking the question. So I first of all was kind of like, okay. And I said, so what do you mean by old? And she goes, like 30. I'm like, 30? That makes me ancient. Right. 30. So Facebook. So I put LinkedIn in there because LinkedIn is probably the only social media that I'm active on. So I usually share some trafficking information about once a week or so on LinkedIn. That's synchronous. Asynchronous are typically follower platforms. You choose to follow somebody and then you can see their content. Obviously, Twitter or X, Instagram are going to be big there. No synchronous is the most dangerous. A lot of cyberbullying happens here because that is an anonymous wall platform where you kind of create a wall and then people can post to your wall. And the 2 big players there is Ask.fm and Yik Yak. I thought Yik Yak was gone. Yik Yak has made it an explosive return, and middle schoolers are downloading Yik Yak by the tens of thousands. Are downloading Yik Yak. And I'll show you what it looks like in just a minute. But they're wall platforms. Typically, they were designed for college, so that if you were like at USF and the college professor, you had a class and you didn't really understand, you could post a question on your wall, and then people from the college could join in and say, hey, did you think about this, or help you answer that. It was kind of designed to do that. Now it's being designed so that kids are getting a wall, and cyberbullying is happening where they're starting to hear messages like, you're ugly, why don't you just go kill yourself? The body shaming, the bullying that's happening on these with these kids. So, Kim, anything about the social media, what you're seeing on social media platforms? Which ones are you seeing the most?
Yeah. So honestly, like I'm going to classify it with the age range. So like you said, for the middle schoolers, they're on all of the Snapchats, the Instagram, the Kik, the Yik Yak. You'll see a lot more of them pop up here, but I mean, their apps are just loaded with all of these apps that. Should I give it away now or later?
I'll show it to you.
Okay.
I'll let you do it.
Okay, well, they're loaded with all different types of various things that they can do in each one of these apps, and so it's real sad. But like I said, the middle schoolers, they're running with all of that stuff, and then when you get into like young adults, they're more with the dating apps, and yeah, we'll get into all of that different stuff. But a lot of times, parents think that when I get a case, right, and if they do go back to their parent, they think that there was nothing wrong with these apps that were on their phone. And I'm like, yeah, no, that was a whole breeding ground. There's absolutely everything wrong with that, because the issue is with it, how many of us know in this room, like it's just like with Snap, they can go and Snap and they can write what they want, they can text what they want, and as soon as it goes away, it disappears. So you're not able to check what they just said in Snap. There's no way. There's not a way for you to find that. And these kiddos know that. And so I don't want to give all the tidbits away, so I'll save some for some of the other slides, but there's a lot more that I'm seeing, and we'll share that.
And we're gonna see that here, because I'm gonna go to the apps.
Oh, perfect. There we go.
We might just get out of training for this too. Ask, we had Spectrum has had banned Ask and Yak.
Yeah.
And then the federal government asked us to put it back in, because it was an easier way for them to trace the IPs versus over a mobile line. So they had asked us to put it back on. So, yeah, those were the two highest ones that
Yeah, they
we
are.
had last 3 weeks of training. It was,
Ask.fm and Yik Yak.
yep.
Yeah.
So here are 30 apps, and I know everybody counts them and says you only got 15. There'll be another 15. I always have somebody raise their hand. There's only 15. What I want you to notice about these 30 apps, and so I had put together, I think there at that time was 14 or 15. The sheriff's office had that on their website, and we created it for the website. I think it's still there. It shouldn't be. It should be updated, but I think it's still there. But I revamped it to 21, and then probably 2 years ago or a year or so ago, we went back and kind of revamped it into the 30. I talked to our ICAC detectives and our SROs and said, where are the kids at? And this kind of was the top list that they gave me. Now, understand there's more than this. This is not exhaustive, it's representative. It simply says, be aware of some of these categories in particular. And by all means, take pictures. In fact, I would encourage you to take pictures, because these are what you're going to be running into. You're going to be running into apps like this. So you see the Ask.fm over there. I'll let Kim take care of the calculator packet because she really wants to.
I want this one too.
But Bumble, Grindr, all of these that you see in here are going to be Discord, and she'll talk probably about those too.
Yeah.
But just understand that this is not exhaustive, it's representative. This is 15 of some of the highly used ones by kids and how dangerous they really are. So go ahead.
Yeah. So first I'm gonna start you off with Discord. So Discord, I have a couple of multi-jurisdictional cases right now. I can't go into the various details of it, but she's 15 years old. She was recruited off of Discord by a stranger. Well, it's not just a stranger. He's affiliated with one of the most disgusting gangs that, I mean, they have these kids eventually get suicidal. What are some other things? Like, they're just, like I said, by the time we got her back, she was so brainwashed and trauma bonded to him, but it's an occult gang, basically. That's the word I'm looking for. So he's an occult gang. Is it the seven, I'm sorry, I got up too early this morning. It's like the 763 gang or something like that.
Yeah.
Am I saying it
Yeah.
right? Okay, so it was that gang. And so long story short, they lured this little girl out of her Manatee home all the way up to Ohio. And she met him on Discord. But by the time that we made contact and was able to obviously hit the home, extract her out, put her into services, and get her back to Florida, oh my gosh, she was already in love with him. She was suicidal. She wanted to kill herself. She was already trying to self-harm, even in the holding cell and stuff like that. She was trying to find things, it was just, it was that detrimental to see how she went from how the parents described before she left to where she was by the time we got her, and the extensive services that we had to wrap around her. But Discord, that's where she met him at. And that is where a lot of the younger youth, like I said, those middle school ages, they're meeting them on Discord. They're complete strangers.
Why do parents let kids have this on their phone?
They're unaware. Yeah, they don't.
They're lazy.
Well, we're gonna get into that. Yeah, we're gonna get into
Yeah,
that.
there is a way to block it.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk
But
about
if parents will block it, right? Because they're not even doing phone checks. They're not even checking them. They're not keeping up with
Well, we
it.
agree.
Yeah.
it. We totally agree.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
parents
They
have
want to
gotta
be their
be parents.
friend. They want to be their friend. They want to be their parent. They want to be their friend. I mean, it's disgusting. So let me take you into this calculator app. So this calculator app, it acts like a calculator, works just like an Apple calculator. You would think it's a calculator even if you took your grandchild's phone and opened it up, it would work as a calculator. The thing about this calculator app though is it's a secret vault. So your child, your grandkid can put in a special code, only they know, you don't know, and that rolls over into a vault. And when it rolls into the vault, there's secret messages, there's pictures, explicit nudes, videos, anything that they don't want mom and dad to find in the regular photo album. So you may take their phone and go through it, but if you don't have a service like Bark or something that we're going to tell you about later on, you would have no idea that they have all of these messages, pictures, videos, and conversations that are horrible. Because why do you think they're in the vault? They don't want you to know about it. And so again, these act just like a calculator. Like you'll never even know it. And it has all this hidden stuff inside there. Is there anything you want to add to it?
Well, when you walk in, they simply swipe up and it rolls back over and it's just a calculator.
Calculator.
You would have no idea, none. They'll put contacts in there that they don't want you to know about, friends, names, contacts, videos, pornographic material will oftentimes be in there, and it's opened up. One of the other popular ones, the calculator being the most popular vault app that's out there, but they also have photo albums where you can put your family vacation, they'll put family vacation photographs in there, so you think, oh, look, Johnny's really excited about going to the Grand Canyon, he got all these pictures about, but when you swipe across a certain pattern that they set up, it rolls over and the vault is there. So these are called vault apps. What I always encourage you to do is to go in your app store on your phone or your Google Play Store, or whatever they call it on Google. You can tell I don't have a Google phone, or an Android. But if you go into that store or go into your app store and just type vault, and you tell me how many apps fall down. I mean, there will be literally 10s and 20s and 30s that will drop down, and most of them are free. So the kids download those, and now they're starting to get really into trouble. So you can see them. Let me get over, because I want to be mindful of your, did I change it? Yeah. So Snap, you can see down there. Signal is big. Kik was big for a long time. Now Kik is back. So Kik had went away for a while. Kik servers are in Canada, so law enforcement has a really hard time getting a subpoena to get them to respond when you're looking for a missing kid. You're trying to find their messages. Very difficult. Snap. Signal used to be, it was Kik for a long time, went to WhatsApp. Now mom and dad know about WhatsApp, right? And so kids don't think that's cool anymore. So now they're on Telegram and Signal are probably the two big ones. The other one that I'll mention to you, and I haven't yet put it up here as an update, is Threema. So Threema is probably the worst I have ever seen. Came right out of the dark web. So people communicate on the dark web on something known as Threema. You had to get, for those of you that know the dark web, you had to go through the Onion router to get there, the Tor, you get onto the dark web. Threema was kind of that communication tool there, but now they've actually dropped it into the App Store and to the Google. So just really a dangerous encrypted messaging system. Yik Yak is there with the gold. Telegram you can see, Signal you can see. Telegram's been in the news a little bit. Some of you probably have heard some of the Telegram where they're starting to get in trouble because they're creating backdoors to get into their messaging. So people are saying they're not really good anymore, so they're really moving over to Signal. In fact, you probably heard the government people get in trouble by using Signal, a Signal chat. So you can see kind of where that's at. TikTok, anything there you want to, Roblox, I hear that all the time. If it's got a chat feature in it, it's dangerous. Just know that. Why? Because they can be chatting with anyone. It amazes me, and I apologize for taking a little bit of extra time here, but it amazes me how that we tell our kids, stranger danger, don't go to the mall by yourself, don't do that, and then we turn around and hand a cell phone, a smartphone, and put it in their hand, and every predator in the world is now in the palm of their hand. Every predator. You know how many? 500,000 that are known sex offenders and predators. And we put every one of them in the hands of your kid. We put the unknown in the hands of your kids. We put teenager peer-to-peer recruiters in their hand. And we act like we're doing them a service.
They're uneducated, the parents.
Yes.
The people.
They should be in this room.
Yep.
They should be. That's why we did this.
But
I didn't
how
do this
do
because
you
I'm
get
looking for
the
something
word
else to do.
out?
We're doing this to educate somebody.
How do you get the word out that there's meetings like this?
You.
That's,
It takes you, it takes you, it takes you, it takes everybody.
Yeah. We just want to build it up so
spread
that
the
we're
word.
into the whole community. And that's what our goal is.
I
So,
mean, this is like nothing.
let me mention one other thing. You see Tinder here, and the reason why I'll mention that is, and I'll probably talk a little bit more about this in just a moment, but understand that dating apps are now recruiting fields for trafficking. And I will tell you that probably the worst one, and here's where I'll get sued, because I was told if I ever use this again, that they're going to sue me for $5 million.
Whisper.
And
Hold on, I'll mute it. I'll mute you.
That's actually an app.
Mute it.
in our area, well, because it's free, the traffickers put their girls up on there. And I'll tell you in just a minute how to be able to kind of determine if that's a minor that's being sold on that dating website as well. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. So Tinder, just be aware that dating websites are also being used as well. Before I get to this, I want to talk about gaming systems for just a little bit. It's a little bit personal for me. I have a son who is who's adopted from Guatemala. He's the greatest kid in the world. Such a blessing to me. I adopted him when he was born. He was about 7 months old when I flew to Guatemala City and picked him up and brought him to the United States and landed at the Atlanta. That was his first experience of America, was Atlanta. It's a wonder he still likes America. That is the worst airport in the world. And
Now you're going to get sued.
so just added to it. So his name is Justin, and a great kid. He's a little Mayan Indian. I tell people all the time, he's got coal black hair, big round brown face, coal black eyes. He's a little Mayan Indian. I said when he was 8, he was about that tall. When he was 10, he was that tall. When he was 12, he was that tall. When he was 14, he was that tall. Had a growth spurt, he's now this tall. And I just he's a little bit taller than that. But he's just such a great kid. But he was about 11 or 12, and he walked in. He was playing on Xbox One that we had at the house. And I had been, told him straight up he could not have friends on there on the chat side of it unless I had met the friend and their parents. It was the only way that they could be in the, and so that was their. But one of the other kids had invited in a 16-year-old girl from Georgia into the chat. And he immediately came and said, Dad, you need to see this. And I walked in, as soon as I saw the chat, I knew it was not a 16-year-old from Georgia. And based on some of the information we were able to gather, it turned out to be a 41-year-old white male out of Wisconsin. And what he did in the chat was, as a 16-year-old girl, was he told my son, and those that were in the chat, not just him, but those in the chat, hey, my family's coming on vacation in 2 weeks down to Florida. Let's meet at a park. Don't tell your parents, we'll surprise them. But we'll meet at the park. If my son, and I'm convinced that if my son would have met that girl at the park, I would have never saw my son again. And that's me with a green and white cruiser sitting in the driveway in a cop's house, thinking nobody's going to mess with my family because look at what I have out here. And yet inside the house, through this internet and through Wi-Fi's and online platforms, predator jumped right into my living room. Just be aware that no matter who you are and what you're doing, there's ways to get in. There's ways to get in. We're going to talk about ways to keep them out. Just anything about gaming systems that come to mind?
Well, just like you already touched with anything with the chat feature, so Roblox. I mean, if I get into all these like Grand Theft Auto, I mean, it's just.
Yeah, I usually talk about GTA.
Yeah, it's a mess. I mean, anything with a chat feature though, so Minecraft, Roblox, anything that has a chat feature, it's just really dangerous. I mean, it ultimately is, because unless you know for sure that they're not talking to anyone outside of the little friend group that you know, like you said, that's where the recruiting happens for boys. And so,
It's too much for parents to do though. They're busy, they're working, they have.
We got help coming. That's why they should all be here.
Yeah.
So we're gonna give you some help here in a second.
yeah,
So one of the things you've heard us refer to is BARK.
yep.
So BARK is and I'm just going to put it in my terms, it's a parental digital surveillance tool. And it's what parents can use. You download it to all their digital devices, and Bark will monitor everything. In fact, it will ask you as a parent that you have to give permission for them to download anything, and you can set it up so you can even read all their text messages.
Is it
will-
free?
I'm sorry?
Is Bark free?
It is not.
No, that's what Gabby
Yeah.
is doing.
So, so Bark, it does cost a little bit, but it is probably the best
The best.
that I know of.
And it's not expensive.
It is not expensive.
Super expensive. It's like $15-20, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not expensive, but there is a little bit of a cost to it.
Yeah.
But if you put that on there, it will alert you if they try to download. If they tried to download the calculator that we just showed you, instead of telling you it's a calculator, to tell you they just tried to download a ball game. I mean, you'll know what it is. So it's a way to kind of strip away the covering and tell you what the mechanism. So Bark is probably the best, but I'm gonna give you two more resources as well, and I would encourage you to check these out. Protect Young Eyes is really, really good. And if you have a parent or a grandparent that's concerned about it, I would encourage them to go to Protect Young Eyes. The other one is Covenant Eyes. So think about those three. So you got Bark, Protect Young Eyes, and Covenant Eyes. They are probably the best. With Bark probably being the most robust. Really, back in the day, you used to have like Net Nanny and some of those, and I think they're still out there. But I would highly encourage you to look at one of those three, with Bark probably being the best. And I'll show you why in just a moment. So Bark also puts together a report based on all the information that comes across their platform. By the way, you can actually buy a Bark phone for your kids. And it is already preloaded with all the rights tools to make sure that your kid is not going to get exploited online. So they have some really good programs and tools out there, and I would encourage you to research Bark, and again, Protect Young Eyes or Covenant Eyes. We have a friend, Lisa Haba, who sued Twitter. I wish I could talk about that tonight because it's an amazing lawsuit. It's now in front of the Supreme Court. Her kids all have Bark phones, and so it's just an amazing tool to have. But they in 2023, Bark analyzed more than, I want you to get this, 5.6 billion pieces of information from kids who had Bark installed on their phone. Now they stripped out all the PII, so they don't know who the person is, but they looked at the data. And when they looked at this data, they were looking at things like self-harm, sexual content. Look at sexual content. 58% of tweens, now that's younger than a teen, 58% of tweens and 75% of teens encountered nudity or content of a sexual nature on their phone in a year. 58% of tweens, 75% of teens are encountered. We're looking at stats now that the first exposure to pornography, and this has always been like 12 to 14, one time it's 14 to 17, now we're looking at 8 and 9. And so it is scary what's out there, that they're getting their first exposures. And look, I'm not blaming the kids, so don't ever take this as kids are bad. Kids are curious. Kids are trying to learn. They're growing up. They just wonder. Yeah, and so they're curious. Yes.
I actually remember I was back in 6th grade. One of my friends found like all these cool Spider-Man photos and everything. Ended up giving me a website that he's like, yeah, I found them all right here. Loaded up the website when I got home. First thing that popped up was ads for pornography.
Without a doubt.
And that was 6th grade for me.
So they don't. Our kids are not seeking it out necessarily.
Yeah.
The porn is seeking them.
Yeah.
And it's a totally different. We're in a totally different game now.
It's just like, it's just the IRS.com.
Yeah.
You haven't been to IRS.com? It's not the IRS people.
Yeah, yeah, and just like she said about Snapchat, and I'm going to hurry through the last couple and maybe answer a couple of questions before we get out of here. But one of the things that she talked about Snapchat, that the video goes away, the conversation goes away, it's up for 8 seconds and it disappears. So you as a parent have a hard time tracking back that conversation. But the person on the other end of the line is doing what they call capping. So capping is the term that means it's being video recorded on the other side. So they're in this conversation, and if I had a chance to talk to you about the lawsuit for Lisa Haba, that's exactly what this centered around, is that they were on a snap with what they thought was a girl who was showing them her breast and asking these two 14-year-old boys to show her their private parts. And they're, of course, ramped up by now and kind of feeling the moment. Because of that sexual content that's going back and forth. she said, I'll show you all of mine if you'll do certain things, and they end up with the conversation, they ended up doing some things they were very ashamed about. But what's happening on the other end of that, they're being capped, which means they're being recorded. That then shows up on Twitter 2 years later. And by the time they were able to first discover it by the kids in school who made fun of him, and it actually drove him to be suicidal, and was about to commit suicide before his parent found him, his mom found him. What ends up happening is that they get a hold of, 2 years later, they get a hold of Twitter and ask Twitter to take it down. And Twitter says, no, we won't do that. You gotta prove he was 14. And so she sends a picture of his Florida ID along with his birth certificate. Yeah, he appears to be like he was 14, but we'll investigate. She asked them to take it down while they investigated. They left it up for 9 days. And during those 9 days, it was viewed 167,000 times. Will that kid ever get their life back? Never. Never. So we're looking at bullying, predators, disorder, violence. They categorize this. And I want to show you this right here. I want you to look at this. According to Bark, these are the top 5 apps that are being used for sexual content, violence, body image. These are the top 5, according to Bark. Now, take a look. Now, I'm going to show you one more screen. This is the top 5 for suicide, ideation, hate speech, depression. Top 5. What's interesting about this, I think it always is worth noting, is these aren't like dark, obscure apps, right? These are everyday apps that most of us are very familiar with. Is there one that appeared on every single one? Snap was on 5. Instagram was on all 6. Instagram. We don't think of Instagram as being a hostile app, do we? And yet Bart discovered that our kids are being used and abused by Instagram in all 6 of these categories. It's just an interesting thing to kind of, and that all came from Bart.
And I would say Instagram is the primary problem with a lot of the cases I have. It's sad. You would think it was one of these other apps. It's not. It's Instagram.
I'm not going to go. This is the actual website of a trafficker, and I'll go through this and talk a little bit more about why. I won't bore you with that. But I want to show you one other thing because I think this is important. I'll skip it. This is some of the language they use out of Street Track. We talked about the rub maps. You can see this. I have a lexicon for my years of doing this. I'm over 240 words that sex traffickers use in the life. Things that we may say, but they mean a whole different thing when you say it in the sex trafficking business. This is the new communication. This is why I wanted to kind of get to this slide. Now they're using emojis to communicate back and forth. And if you as a parent or grandparent don't know that there's a meaning behind that emoji, you're gonna miss entire conversations. So just kind of, they're also use some of these emojis in those, what we talked about, those dating app websites, when they're advertising kids. They'll advertise them as a 19-year-old white female who likes long walks on the beach and romantic dinners. But right beside 19, they'll put the growing heart emoji, which signals to a buyer you're getting a minor. It's not an adult. This is going to be a 16 or 17-year-old. So they use certain things inside there in the industry to kind of communicate. Then they'll put them together and kind of make some declarations, some sentences out of those as well. So I just wanted to kind of get that to, that's the new communication. You heard Kim talk about branding. Branding's a tattoo, but the tattoo itself is linked to the trafficker. So they're being branded like cattle. So they're showing ownership of them. And Kim talked to you about she has 2 of those. She's been branded twice, which shows ownership by her trafficker to them. You can see the barcode inside the mouth. That was becoming more popular because law enforcement is starting to learn to look for cats that are out. And so especially if you see 2 of the same ones with 2 girls that may be together, that could be a clue that you have a stable that's operating. So there's certain things that we're looking for. So they started doing some of that inside the mouth. And that particular pimp made the statement that when he was asked about why are you not proud of your brand? Why are you branding on the inside of the mouth? And he reared back in his chair and said, because I'm making money where the money's being made. Talking about when she puts her mouth on the buyer, that he's making the money. So he got off knowing that his brand was right there where the moneymaker was, as he called it. So you can see kind of that, it's this degrading, just so branding, but what we're seeing, and this is why I want to bring this up to you, and then I'll stop. Soft branding. Now, that was hard branding. That's beginning, not that it's going away, because it's still there, but because, again, law enforcement is starting to really catch on to the branding side of this and really beginning to look, and it kind of shows street, it's like a newspaper out on the street. You can read it if you know what you're looking for, especially with minors who may not have permission to go get a tat that can show a brand. They're using soft branding. So it'd be a necklace with a logo or an emblem that kind of represents the trafficker. It might be a charm bracelet with charms on it that represent the trafficker. This one here, his street name was Leo, so he represented himself as a lion. And what he would do is he would carve in the forehead 304. So that number is a sex trafficking number. So 304 is upside down for hoe. So he was letting the street know that this girl who's wearing this necklace is Leo's hoe. So they would put the number right inside the forehead of that. And then he had the bracelets with the charms on it as well. So that's known as soft branding. And questions for us? Because we're about to run over time. I don't want to do that. I told you 8 o'clock, I want to be done. No questions? Yes.
So, I have a 10-year-old son, and I also have some previous law enforcement experience as a civilian.
Okay.
So this stuff is very in front of me. It always has been. My son's a gamer, but my husband's very good with knowing how to turn off any type of chat things. But my concern is as well, just with just being out and about. I know there's a lot of the virtual type things happening, but I'm in the stage where I want my son to not be terrified, to be alone walking amongst, everybody out there, because of course we've taught him to stay close, but I want him now, he's like becoming a young boy, to have confidence to feel comfortable, like walking into a restroom alone, because up until now, he's always been with me or my husband. Sometimes my husband's not with me, and he's at the age where I don't really feel comfortable bringing him in the women's bathroom.
Right.
Things like that. So just maybe some tips on how I can help him be confident, just walking in stores and things, just because I see videos out
Sure.
there. I don't know how common it actually is where somebody can just get
It's not common, but it
taken,
happens.
Yeah.
So to put the stats in, I'll turn it to Kim to kind of give some tips, because again, she deals with kiddos all the time. I'll give you a stat that may bring some comfort to you. So when you talk about snatching, we see the white van pulling up and yanking somebody in the door and blowing, it just doesn't happen very often. Very, 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 now I'm not saying it don't happen. I'm just saying it's very, very rare. In fact, most of the time they're going to use a white van because they know that's kind of what everybody's looking for is a white van. These myths that are out there, and I hear it propagated even here. If you see $100 bill under the windshield wiper, you're about to get trafficked. Well, why in the world would they stick a $100 bill under that? They want 100 from you. They don't want to give you one. I tell somebody if I ever see a $100 bill under my windshield, I'm going straight to the restaurant. And I'm going to give me a good deal. Or if you get a zip tie around your door handle, all this stuff floats out there, and I think what it does is it makes us scared, right? But statistically, only less than 3% are snatched, which means less than 3% are kidnapped, snatched off the street. Now, 3% is still too high, but less than 3%. Over 97% are lured in, which means somebody's grooming them, conditioning them, getting them ready, telling them they're beautiful, doing all of those things that you heard tonight. So if I give you that stat and tell you that less than 3% and over 97%, what should be our primary focus as parents and grandparents? Yeah, we should really be focusing on how to keep my child from being groomed and how to keep them from being recruited. You heard Kim talk about that a little bit in just a minute. But I also love the idea that you're talking about, and that's how do you produce in our young men? Because we talked about this today in our legislative working group, and that was, we live in a society where if we're not careful, our women and girls will be conditioned to be victims because of all the onslaught of information that comes after our girls, and we condition our boys to become become buyers. And it's so true, because boys primarily, men are primarily, not exclusively, because women buy as well. Trans buy, LGBTQ+, it's across the entire spectrum, but primarily it's men. So I love where you're going with that, and that is how do we create the confidence in our young men and our boys so that they carry themselves with confidence, and in doing so they become that protector that boys instinctively want to be. I call them today warrior poets. That on one hand they're a warrior, on the other hand they're gentle, and they can speak in poets, and they're a protector provider. They are a protector, they're also a provider. We don't talk about boys and men being men anymore. Somehow other men have become this really, and I'm one of them. You know, I'm a white male, and so I'm the worst thing that ever happened. According to the news media, you know, CNN and MSNBC calls me the worst thing that ever walked in shoe leather. My point being is, how do we do that? And I think Kim has some great guidance in some of the work that she does with kiddos on how do we create it. One thing that I will say before I turn it to her is that I think boys should be treated to walk with confidence. They should meet somebody's eyes. They should carry an air about them that they are confident, because the minute, as Kim said, the minute the eyes go down and there's that shuffling back and forth, and if we don't create that confidence in them, you use that word, if we don't create that confidence, we're setting the stage for them to be recruited and grown. But anyway.
Well, I think you did a great job, because naturally as a parent, I was very fear-based because of what I went through, right? And so I did shelter my girls, and at 16 years old, my daughter still won't go to the bathroom without me. So you're right, that is the other alternative to that. Because sadly, right, I mean, there's two sides of it. You let the 10-year-old go in the bathroom by himself to give him, you know, confidence, and he's into a growing boy, but then I worry about, well, who's standing next to him, or possibly, you know what I mean? So I would say how you counteract that, and it's what I've done for my daughter as well. We're getting better now, where she can go to the bathroom by herself, but how I would counteract that is just like how he was saying to you, is teach him what to look for, teach him about grooming, educate him yourself, don't allow the world to educate him. You pour into him as a mom, so everything that you're learning or that you already know about this, pour it into him so that he knows the red flags. That way he knows that he can be confident in himself, but he can also come talk to mom and dad if somebody is getting fishy with him, you know? And so that's what I can tell you. It's definitely saved my daughter in a situation where, because I've been open and had that open communication with her and given her the education and the knowledge that other parents have not given their children, she had a friend that almost was trafficked off of Instagram and Cash App. And so she was able to intervene, you know, tell me so that I could intervene. And so that situation right there didn't have to turn out awful. So that's how, if we educate our kiddos, right, then they can not only save their own lives, but their, you know, their friends' lives as well. So just educate them.
Yeah, and you're doing the right things.
Yeah.
And I always get encouraged when I hear somebody talk like you're talking.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, there's somebody who is putting armor around their child
Yeah.
and letting them be boys, let them grow up, but at the same time protecting them with the education and the empowerment. The other thing I would mention to you, and this is just a suggestion for everyone, of course, my daughter's being a cop and dealing with this. My solution was, when you come home from school, I'm going to put you in a locked box. And then in the morning, I'll let you out and take you to school. And that's how we're going to live for the next 60 years.
That's what I did for like the first 10 years, and that's why I'm cleaning it up the other 6. So.
But one of the things that we did in our house is my one daughter, who thankfully has turned out to be okay, but my one daughter came out to me one time and said, "Dad, I need to talk to you about something." And I said, "Okay." And she was probably 13 maybe. She came out, she said, I'm not going to let you come into the bedroom anymore unannounced. You need to ask my permission to come in the bedroom, because that's my bedroom, and I want you to respect my privacy. Now, I'm somebody who can get angry pretty quick, so I had to really kind of just swallow a couple of times when she said it to him. I said, "Hold on just a minute, just stay right there, I'll be right back." And when I came back from the garage, I had a hammer and a screwdriver. Her door come off of her bedroom. It went into the garage, and I said, "Enjoy your privacy." And for the next 6 weeks, there was no door on her room. Then we had the conversation when I brought her into the living room and said, the conversation about, "See this roof? It's all mine. You don't own anything in this place. It's all, and anything I own, I'm going to do." We had that conversation. But one of the things that we did, and I see the hand back there, and I'll get to you in just a second. One of the things that we did is we had what I call a digital curfew. And so my kids would have to bring any digital device they had to bring it. I put it in a basket, closed the lid of the basket. It went into the bedroom with me.
Yeah.
And then in the morning, they got their stuff back. We did little things like that because what kid, what 12-year-old needs to be under the blankets at 3 o'clock in the morning while you're sleeping, doing this with their phone and getting on? So,
Nothing good happens after midnight.
no, it doesn't. So we try to do practical things here. Yes, sir.
So, I have a 13-year-old, and I brainwashed her since she was 2 that princesses don't go on dates without a carriage driver. And she's been told that she doesn't, first of all, she can date at 18 or with a driver, or she can date at 16 if she gets an upper level belt in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And she experiences a heart attack. She came to me a couple weeks ago and said to me, "You know what, Daddy?" She goes, "I'm really glad that you're not going to let me date till 18. I'm not going to let my children either, because I make really bad decisions about boys." So she has got unbelievable wisdom, but I've been in her ear her whole life.
Yeah. And that engaged parenting, and I tell people it's time for parents to be parents again.
Yep.
Because if you don't teach them, somebody else will teach them, and you don't want them to be taught those things. I'll never forget, again, the same daughter, because it seemed like she was the one. My oldest daughter, who's the attorney now, I didn't have a bit of problem with her. It was my other daughter. Oh Lord, she made up for the other. And so she was the one that had to do a lot of caretaking. But I was at the house one time, and I think I happened to be cleaning the gun, which is a great moment for this to happen. And so I think I was cleaning my service weapon. I get a knock on the door, and I wasn't expecting anybody. I open it up, and there's this young guy standing there. He goes, "I'm here for your daughter." And I looked at him, and I said, "Oh, no, you're not." I said, "You're not here for my daughter. I don't know whose daughter you're talking about. You're not here for my daughter." "Oh, yeah, she told me to come by and get her." I said, "Oh, no, she didn't. And she might have told you that, but she ain't going nowhere with you." So he looked over my shoulder, and of course, I had the handgun just all over the place. He was like, "Yes, sir, I'll see you later." I was here. Lauren, I should have said her name. She comes out of the bedroom, and she goes, "Hey, Dad, was that for me?" And I said, "Oh, no, it wasn't, baby. That one for you." So I think, being that parent, and I think that's look, we're going to make mistakes, right? We're not going to do everything right, but I think being that engaged parent gets those results like you talked about, where thank you for doing that, and that's the way. What you're doing, I think I salute you for that. I mean,
Well, I think you
instilling
go
that
the
knowledge.
next step. The cleaning the gun thing's cool and all, but you're gonna, if someone ever takes her out, which will happen, it's gonna be, if anything happens to her, I'll make you disappear and we'll never.
Yeah.
They don't believe that.
A good little threat sign. Scott?
So afterwards, I've got a story that'll beat that one. But yes, to answer what she was saying, I just want to throw my 2 cents in there. As a father of a 12, my youngest is 12. The other ones are in their 20s now. But at 12 years old, they know everything. They're not going to be manipulated into it because they're smarter than everyone. Just ask them. And I'm sure if yours is 10, he's hitting that, or he's going to hit it soon, where they's like, "Oh, I don't have to worry about that. I'll never fall for that." And the route that I have taken with my youngest is, yes, you're brilliant, but you need to be aware, and you need to keep these things in mind, and you need to educate yourself and listen to us about it, because all of you, what about your younger friends? What about your classmates? And if you've got one of those that doesn't really want to listen because they don't think they'll ever fall for it, that they'll ever, because they're smart enough, put them in that guardian mode. Let them think about it the other way. Is, okay, well, you need to learn all this. You need to be alert and conscious of all these things and all what could happen. And pay attention to what's happening and look critically at what's happening in whatever chat, because to make sure that your friends aren't being targeted. So that really gives them a different way to look at it and can be really effective.
Let me do one here, and then Tony, come on up here. I want to introduce you to everybody, and let you kind of have the closing words, and I'm gonna let you guys get out here.
So when I bought my kid's first computer, I think it was at Radio Shack. Obviously, this was 95 to 2000. The person who worked there told me, he said, do you know where this goes in your home? My thinking was on the desk by the wall. He said, find the most worn spot in the carpet and put it there. And that was back then. Now, the devices are smaller, they're hiding in their bedroom with it, and mom and dad don't want the game system on the living room TV. What advice, other than like Bart, when they're in the home and using the devices, where should they be? In their rooms behind a closed door? In a living room?
No,
Living room.
no, no, they should not. They should be in the most used room in the house, period. Period. And it should be pointed toward where when you walk in, you see the screen. Never turned away.
I felt the same way.
Yeah, absolutely, no, without a doubt. Nothing hidden at all.
Because so
Tony?
often you go over and they're in the bedroom. The door's
Yeah,
closed.
yeah, absolutely, that's the worst place.
No, gaming system, even at our place, it's in the living room.
There's another, I know, I trip
Yep.
over it.
He's got his laptop in his room, but that's different.
So I just want to say, you're the reason why I volunteer where I volunteer. There's a home with kids who are in very bad situations, and many of them have been trafficked. And I see the young girls, and sometimes they run away and they feed off each other, and the two girls they'll go away together, but they don't have a parent looking out for them. So then it's the kids are mentoring the kids, and it's just a really bad situation. They have to grow up way too soon, and too many times. The last week was absolutely depressing. I've seen something that absolutely wrecked my husband and I. But we always go back, and it's because of people like you, where if I can see them and give them gentle love and just be there for them, that's all I want. So I grew up with foster children. My parents our home was dysfunctional, but our dysfunctional home was heaven to them compared to what they went through. Till my mother's dying day, foster kids called her and called her mom. And I am still friends with kids that my parents have raised, and to see the everlasting effect of what it has done to them, these situations, it's heartbreaking. So you're very, very resilient that you've turned the whole situation around and you're helping other people with this. But when you were talking about the body shaming, I recently saw a little girl, 11 years old, tiny little twig, telling me how she has to diet. And that's like, you can literally look at these kids and you can tell they're far more grown than they should be. They didn't have a childhood. It's not fair. They never got to make a mistake on their own. They never got to screw anything up on their own. It's not their fault, the parents that they were dealt in life. So I just want to thank you for that, because it inspires me when I get so depressed at everything I see, and I just want to shut off, but I don't shut off. I need to see people like you who pulled out of it so that I can stay resilient and keep going back and not shut down after getting depressed at all the sadness I see. I just wish people would be parents and see that it's an honor. And unfortunately, it seems like a lot of parents are afraid of parenting and they want to be liked. My parents didn't care if I liked them. So.
And Kim, it's a chain reaction. You inspire her, she inspires me. And I'm hoping there's somebody down the road that I'm inspiring. It's a chain reaction that you started.
So I want to, Tony is vice president of Warrior 321. She was right at the very beginning at Panera Bread, as I mentioned to you earlier. Tony's amazing, does incredible work, and she's just got a heart of gold for those of you that know her, and love her to death, and she's amazing. We do have a Facebook we'd like you to follow for those that may be here for the first time. There's some armbands, or there was a wristbands somewhere.
There's not.
So I would encourage you to take more than one. Please take some and give them away and tell people about what you heard today in our community, so take more, give them away, drive them over. We have a meeting on the last Monday of every month. It's at 1 o'clock, the last Monday of every month at 1 o'clock, and it's at the Elks.
The Elks Lodge on County Line.
On County Line. So you're welcome to join us for those meetings. Follow us on Facebook, and let's make a difference in our community. Let's make this thing happen. I want to thank everybody that's a part of Warrior that has really labored in this. So yes.
I just wanted to throw, before you close out, I wanted to have one more question for you and for Kim. If you know of a child that you think is in that grooming stage, but they're in denial about it, and the parents are in denial about it, oh no, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. At that point, what can we do?
So I would encourage, at a minimum, to call the hotline and get professionals involved.
The sheriff's office.
Yeah, the local sheriff. And the reason I say that is because kids sometimes will not listen to a parent or to somebody who's close to them, but sometimes they may listen to somebody that comes in from the outside.
But that was the question, what hotline?
So I will give you two. So I'll give you the numbers for these hotlines. They were supposed to be on the inside of your wristband, and I don't know why they didn't show up there. When we had them printed, they were supposed to print that on the inside. So, but the two numbers, so Florida's human trafficking hotline is 855-FLA-SAFE. So 855-FLA, Florida, SAFE. That I would encourage you to put it in your phone, put it under a contact, Florida hotline. That goes straight to FDLE, goes straight to law enforcement, so that's a number. If you're looking for resources and you don't really want to get law enforcement involved at the beginning because they're kind of, you can call the National Human Trafficking Hotline, which is 888-373-7888. That's the National Human Trafficking Hotline. They can give you resources, they can put people in touch with you, they can help you through processes like that, maybe get a professional involved that can kind of help navigate. So that again is 888-373-7888, National Hotline. Florida hotline, 855-FLA-SAFE. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming out tonight. I really appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time to be here. I wish the room would have been full. I think everybody needs to hear information like this, but you got to hear it, and I'm thankful that you came out. So thank you so much. Thanks to Kim. Thanks to Thomas.
And I want to say thank you to the Win the Day Foundation here at the Kruger and Richmond Center for hosting us tonight.